Kia ora, everyone, and welcome back to Stripped and Unscripted. I'm Vixen Temple.
And I am Medeline Rose.
And on today's episode, we wanted to have a korero about mental health as sex workers, navigating the mental health system, navigating mental health in general as sex workers. So, content warning for this show, we will be going into discussions of mental health, which will take us on a range of topics, including suicide, suicidal ideation, sexual abuse and assaults, and discussions of themes of mental health. We thought we'd start off by both just specifying like what mental health conditions we both have. Let's have a fun game of what mental health traumas do you have? So I have been diagnosed with PTSD, depression, and anxiety. That is on my medical certificate for WINS. And I also, Medeline and I were discussing off air that we should mention that I've been diagnosed with ADHD. I have the combined type, but the reason we mention those is because we both agree that neurodiversity greatly influences the ways that our mental health has manifested. And it's also, I think, the reason that I have so much mental health issues is growing up with undiagnosed neurodiversity and just how traumatic that was. So while I have been diagnosed officially with PTSD, I suspect that it's CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is I think in its simplest definition, like PTSD is for one incident, but complex is for just multiple. It's just a lot more complicated and complex. So how about you, Medeline? What mental health conditions do you have?
What is wrong with me mentally? So agree with Vixen on what she said. Like my ADHD and my autism greatly inform my mental health, my behavior, everything. So I've been diagnosed with ADHD and autism, so ADHD. I'm also diagnosed with PTSD, also in the process of figuring out with my psychologist if it is CPTSD. That would make a lot more sense for me. In my understanding, CPTSD can be a bit more relevant to people who have like a prolonged period of trauma. So, like, say a couple of years where you're just being traumatized, or you're just in a very unsafe or unpleasant environment, basically, which is very relevant for me. And then, obviously, what comes with that is anxiety, depression, all that good and fun stuff. But yeah, I think that's everything that's wrong in my brain. Um, not to say that there's anything wrong with having mental illness, there's not. But it is funny kind of to joke about. And that is a little bit of my coping mechanism with some of these things. I find I have a very intimate experience of mental health, and so talking about that with other people can be very interesting at times. And I definitely find that one of my ways to kind of cope with other people's discomfort around this topic is to be a little bit light and funny.
Oh yeah, no, I can absolutely relate to that. I think a lot of us mentally ill people tend to use dark humor or just humor in general as a coping mechanism. I think that mentally ill people make really good memes. So, in regards to navigating mental health and the mental health care system as sex workers specifically, it's an interesting thing. So, with my experience, prior to being a sex worker, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. I think while I was at university, my GP diagnosed me with depression and anxiety, and I went on some mood stabilizers. I have struggled with mental health conditions most of my life, but it wasn't until I was, at university that I really started to like take it seriously and try to seek help for it. But when I was assaulted in 2019 while working as a stripper, I was able to get an ACC sensitive claim. And so from that, I could afford to see a proper psychologist finally. And I started seeing a psychologist when I was in Tamaki Makaurau. And she was the one that diagnosed me with PTSD from the sexual assault at the club. But as I've done more therapy over the years, I've figured out that it's definitely CPTSD. I have prolonged long-term episodes of experiencing a trauma and just being in survival mode a lot. And a lot of that actually came from the strip club, unfortunately. But, and you know, just in regards to like, it's really interesting navigating the mental health system as a S worker, because it's quite this ironic thing where I'm going in literally being like, hey, the reason I'm here is because I was traumatized while working in the strip club. But also it's this really complicated thing of like, I really don't want you to blame the job itself or my choice to be a stripper. I really need you to blame the guy that did it and the systems that contributed to him thinking that it was okay for him to do it. And yes, I was assaulted while working at as a stripper. But I really, like, do you know what I mean, Madeline? Like, it's
Yeah,
so,
so much. Like, and I get 100% what you're saying. And I think maybe something that would be interesting to think about here is like, when you are a sex worker and then as your main form of income, that is your job. That is how you pay your bills. To go in somewhere and be like, I need some help. I'm really struggling. And for someone to give you this sort of like, I know what you mean, Vixen. It's like this shift of energy, and you can see the way that they are sort of engineering the conversation and asking questions and the way they respond. And it almost like gaslights you into thinking that you shouldn't be a sex worker. And it's not helpful at all because that's your fucking job. And you can't just not be a sex worker. And so yeah, like the prejudice and this the stigma that like so many people hold. I just with therapists, like it's happened to me as well. I've had a bunch of counselors and three therapists over the last 5 years. I had one quite a long time ago, when I was like 23. I'm 27 now, and then I kind of like didn't go to therapy for a very, very long time, and I have only in the last like year sort of started doing it again. But one of the counselors that I met in the last little while, in the last year, I am really like blunt. I'm really upfront about the sex worker stuff. I just say it because I'm like, I want to observe the way that you take this straight off the bat. Because again, like it's so relevant, it informs like so much of what we do, but it's not the cause all the time. There's horrible people that we meet in the job that are the cause of these traumas and things, like what Vixen went through, but it's not the actual sex work itself, if that makes sense. At least that's the case for me and Vixen. But I remember telling this specific counselor, and I just remember like I saw her maybe 3, 4 times after that, and she just did not know what the fuck to do with me. Like, I told her my little life story and kind of what was going on. And this was like prior to quite a big mental health like event that I had, maybe like midway through last year. And I just remember going to her and her just kind of looking at me being like, I don't fucking know what to do with you or say to you. She did not even remotely understand how to respond to me when I spoke about sex work or sexual assault at all. And I could tell that like she just definitely probably had never had a sex worker before, maybe, or maybe she had. She just is swervy enough to be shocked when they come into her practice. Um, but I was thinking when you were saying this is like a little bit of a tangent, but I was thinking when you were talking, Vixen, and I was thinking about like a comparison that kind of makes sense more for like maybe the pole fitness audience that we have. Um, Sort of imagine that you are injured, like physically injured, and you go into a physio and you say to the physio, I'm injured. This is what is wrong with me. I did it pole dancing. For that physio to turn around to you and say, well, you shouldn't be pole dancing. You need to completely stop pole dancing. It's in a similar scope. It's like, well, no, I need your help to fix my muscles and have better muscles and better understanding of my body and XYZ so that I don't do this to myself again so I can get stronger and healthier instead of just stopping altogether. And that's the vibe that I think a lot of counselors and therapists can throw sometimes, is that they just don't think that we should be doing sex work. Does that make sense, Vixen?
Oh my gosh, that was such a good analogy. Didn't quay for that. Like, that is exactly what I was getting at. It is really frustrating, as you said. It is our job. And look, the reason we say sex work is that it's to really like showcase to people that it is work. And I know that sounds so simple, but we are not only deserving of worker rights just like everyone else. Another right that we are entitled to is the right to vent about our work without it being used to be like, well, we should shut the industry down. Because it's so fascinating to me how I've worked in a few industries, hospitality, sex work, and I was briefly a librarian. So when I worked in hospo, that was fast food. I worked at KFC. Bro, that fucking job, I was bullied so much. I was exploited so much. I worked so many extra hours, and I sometimes did extra work I wasn't even paid for. I've heard nightmares of, oh, that's right, I've also worked retail. I worked for the Cotton On company. They were bullshit. I've heard some horrible stories from people that work retail, like Glassons and Vixen, of like blatant workplace exploitation and bullying and abuse. But those workers talk about those things, and no one says we need to shut the retail industry down or shut fast food down. The second a sex worker mentions anything inherently negative about our work, it's used to be like, oh, see, we should shut it down. So that puts us into this really uncomfortable position where what other industry do you see out there having to be empowered? Like, swerves always come for sex work isn't empowering. It's work, honey. Work is not empowering. There is nothing empowering about having to earn a fucking living. And so us as sex workers, we don't feel like we're allowed to speak negatively about any workplace stuff because it can be used not only to villainize the industry, but to villainize us, to view us as these like broken, downtrodden humans that we're traumatized because we're sex workers, but then there's also the argument that the reason you became a sex worker in the first place is because you're traumatized. Like in the last episode when I mentioned, when I was asked, are you a stripper because you were assaulted sexually as a child? So you really can't win when you are a mentally ill sex worker because you're either feeling like you're reinforcing this negative stereotype, or if you're quiet, it could kill you. We should be allowed to ask for help without any prejudice or stigma attached to us. And so when you're coming to a therapist saying, listen, I actually fucking love my job as a stripper. I remember saying this to my therapist, like, it changed my life. It's the best thing I've ever done for myself. I cannot emphasize enough how much I love this job, but also it is a job, and here are the negative things that come with it. And one of those things is, unfortunately, that I got assaulted, and it shouldn't be something that just comes with it. It shouldn't be the norm. And I then later on went through the justice system and had my job blamed for why it happened to me, reinforcing to me this idea I already had in my head that I deserved it, and then just being re-traumatized through the justice system, and then needing extra therapy for that, and just not knowing where is safe for me to talk about these issues with a compassionate ear. I want this understanding that it's not going to be put onto me. We're not going to take the blame away from the systems at play when you are actually experiencing the negative stereotypes that come with you, just the inherent fuckamar and shame that you have to carry with that of like, great, I'm reinforcing this negative stereotype and it's not going to be met with compassion. It's going to be met with villainy for me and my industry. There's just no other industry out there. Well, there might be, but I just feel like there's not many other industries out there that when you say to your therapist, yeah, I love my job, but there's some aspects of it that really have like caused me hurt, and I would like help with like getting some skills and tools to navigate that their instant reaction is, as one of my therapists said, well, maybe we need to get you in a position where you're prepared to leave that industry. We need to get you away from that industry. I don't think it's right for you. It's just really counterintuitive. It doesn't help. It really doesn't help anyone involved. And it's infantilizing, it's patronizing, and it just makes you feel really shit about yourself. And it can really fuck with your head and then just contribute to more, mental health issues.
An interesting thing as well about and this is something that I thought about when I was having a little thought in the car about what we were going to talk about today earlier. But um, the fascinating thing with the idea of like quitting sex work in order to have better mental health, um, something that is really actually a really positive of sex work is that often it offers you a sort of like job flexibility that you actually can't find anywhere else, especially not straight off the bat. Like you can go and get a job in a strip club and immediately you're sort of in charge of your hours. I know there are some clubs that are very strict, which are obviously very different. But for my experience with my home club in Auckland, I had control. I had pretty much control over when I worked. And I got to decide that on a Tuesday. I got to go, okay, I want to work this night and this night and this night, or just this night and that night. And that when you are like neurodiverse or mentally ill, unstable, is so important. And honestly, like I went through, like I had about a like year long period of my life in about 2021, 2022, that was like hell on earth. It was hell on earth. And had I been doing a regular job that required me to be at work 5 days a week for X amount of hours, same thing, holy fuck, I don't know how I would have survived. The fact that I was able to be like, oh, like this is the day that I can work, and then I could actually have so many days off because I was only working 3 days a week, 3 nights a week, that was game changing. And so this idea of like quitting sex work to better your mental health, where do you want us to fucking go and work? Like, do you want like, okay, let me go get some job with my current qualifications. Okay, I'll go get a job in a fucking beauty salon and work 9 to 5, 6 days a week. Like, yeah, that's gonna be way better. Like, cheers. You know what I mean? Like, isn't that just like kind of crazy? And I don't think that some people can even comprehend that there are actually like some massive positives to doing sex work that can be so great for neurodiversity and mental health. Do you agree, Vixen?
I love that you mentioned that. That's actually such a good point. And that's what I was referring to earlier when I was trying to explain to my therapist why sex work is actually the best option for me. It's quite ironic that I became a sex worker because, like, in a way, I did become a sex worker because I am mentally ill. I have disabilities that impact my ability to hold down a 9 to 5 job. So sex work is the most feasible option for me. But it's not that negative stereotype of like me becoming a stripper is a reflection of how mentally unwell I am and like I'm crazy and I can't be making oh god, what is it? It's called I've talked about this a lot in my writing. There's this thing called false consciousness, which is this idea that groups of people are so traumatized, usually marginalized people, groups of people are so traumatized by their circumstances that they're not mentally fit enough to make choices for themselves. So other people, usually the people causing them the trauma, have to come in and make those decisions for them. And so when I say like the reason I became a stripper is like, yes, I have mental health conditions that really fuck with me when I'm trying to work a normal, quote unquote, normal job. Being freelance, because that's essentially what I feel like sex work is, self-employment, freelance, it's just the most feasible thing for me. On top of being a sex worker, I'm also a self-employed writer and I'm a performance artist. Like, sex work is my main, probably most consistent source of income that I like. Without, I don't think I could do the other incomes that I have. But being a sex worker, when I graduated university and became a stripper. It's the reason Vixen Temple can even be a thing. It's the reason, people say to me, you do all this stuff. Like, how do you even have the time? I'm like, 'cause I suck dick like 3 times a week. Or like, I used to give lap dances at night and then I have all this time luxury. So I did enter the industry because I was, in need for a better word, too mentally unwell to work a 9 to 5 job. And as I've gotten older, I've become less whakama around that and just realize it's just the reality. My brain is not fit for full-time. Most fucking brains are. The 9-to-5 work week is so patriarchal, colonial, capitalist, nuclear family driven. It's just not realistic for most fucking people, especially in this modern world. With my ADHD and autism, I have probably the spoons in a week, about like 10, 15 hours a week that I can actually have the energy to work. And it's very scattered. It's not like set days. Some days I wake up and it's like, I could get a lot done today. And there's other days I wake up where I'm like, I can't fucking get out of bed. So for me to become a stripper and sex worker was the best thing for my mental health. But ironically, in some ways it was also the worst, because the stripping industry especially has traumatized me. And it's not just the customers, bitch. It was the fucking management. I entered the stripper world at the age of 22 or 23. I think I was 23. Yes, I was 23. And I know that might not seem that young and whatever, but like those are formative years. Those are your 20s. My early 20s, I entered this industry for the first few months, it was great. And then management swapped, and then the management abuse and exploitation came in. And then suddenly it felt like being in an abusive relationship. And my place of work, where I used to feel like I had all this autonomy and power, suddenly was a place where I was walking on eggshells, not just around the customers, but around the people employed to keep me safe. Being in the industry for as long as I was and experiencing the abuse and exploitation from management, it has fucked me up mentally. I'm not going to deny that, because I have this idea in my head that it's just not safe for me to work for someone because of the way that I was treated by my managers, who would fine me, who would steal my money, who would bully me, who would make horrible comments about my physical appearance, about my personal life. And so I can't even express enough how much the managers fucked me up, arguably more than the customers. And even beyond that, the way that the managers would also weaponize your mental health to treat you like shit. Like I touched on in the first episode about respectability politics, where my strip club manager, when I was dancing in Uchipuchi, Dunedin, had a go at me one night and started saying to me that I was fucked in the head because I had an abortion and I was too mentally unwell to work this job, and they were threatening to not renew my contract and just make me just be jobless. They were literally dangling my job in front of my eyes, saying like, you don't sort your shit out, I'm not going to renew your contract because you're fucking mentally ill. Meanwhile, this stress that she is putting on me, the anxiety of like, oh my gosh, am I going to be jobless at the end of this month when my contract runs out? What the fuck? The stress that put me in, the survival mode that put me in. For a week after that, I was suspended, and I was told, we'll discuss the terms of your contract in a week. In the meantime, though, you're stood down and you might not have a job when you come back. That week was so hard for me. I cried. I was stressed. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't even make enough money for rent that night because I was sent home early. That caused me so much mental stress. Meanwhile, this woman is saying I'm too mentally unwell to work a shift that night, that I was fine until she started screaming at me. So management at the club weaponizes our mental health too. And something that really pisses me off is the fact that management gets to profit off our mental health conditions. They get to make money off it. When they fine you for being late or for missing a shift, that is ableism, in my opinion. As we've mentioned, the sex work industry is a very accessible industry for people who have disabilities or mental health issues or neurodiversity or whatever it is that's impacting our ability to hold down a 9-to-5 job. The sex work industry is very accessible to that, and strip club management knows that, and that's why they bring in fines to fine you if you miss a shift and can't provide a medical certificate. Because, for example, I did an interview with, I think, RNZ or Renews a couple of years ago about the time I was fined while working at a club in Tamaki Makaurau because I texted in the morning I was meant to do a day shift and said, listen, I'm having really immense PTSD attacks. Like it would not be safe for me to come to work. And I was told, well, if you don't come in, we're going to fine you. And I was fined. And then I was fined for having PTSD. And then from that, I now owe the club money, which means that I am doing sex work that I'm technically not being paid for because that money is going straight back to management. And that's disgusting. That's so exploitative. That made me feel disgusting when I'm in a lap dance being like, wow, I'm not even going to keep the money I'm making. This is going straight back to managers because I had a PTSD attack one day and they got to gain financially from me having PTSD. Oh my gosh, even saying that now, that is something I don't think I will ever not be angry about, that there are people, there are men especially, that made money, that earned money, got financial gain because I have mental health issues. And a lot of management exploit the hell out of that. It is ableist, it is abusive, it is exploitative, and it should not be legal at all. I don't think it is legal. It should not be happening. So ka pai whai up stilettos for all the work they're doing to combat that. But yeah, and again, it is really hard talking about these sort of things. Even now, talking about this publicly, I'm having anxiety around it because so many people use these experiences we go through to justify why we should shut down the industry. It's like, oh, you're being exploited at work. Okay, like, well, let's just shut it all down. We'll just shut down the industry. Like, no, the shitty managers should be shut down. And that's what Fired Up Stilettos is working towards combating. I became a S worker because it was just the best option for my mental health, but also it's contributed to making my mental health worse. But then in saying that, if I could go back now and know everything I know now, I'd still do it all because it was that or getting an office job. And God damn, like, I just can't do it. Like, I know that people out there look down on people that can't work quote unquote normal jobs. It's just not fucking for me. It doesn't work with my brain. It doesn't work with my body. It doesn't work with how I need to navigate life. And I wouldn't change it. But it is something that I now, as I approach my 30s, just have to desperately find a therapist to help me navigate and unpack so that I don't carry that trauma into my 30s and let it fuck me up for the rest of my life.
I think that I was lucky for the first couple of years of my career in stripping. I was kind of like, I just got good at pole dancing quite quickly, and so I was afforded like a level of respect, which in hindsight is really fucked up. And I became quite close with the managers where I initially started working at, and so I didn't really deal too much with that. But in the second place that I worked at, the treatment from the management there was insane. I'm pretty sure me and Vixen have the same experience at this place. It's like infamous for this. Just the outright bullying and like the job threatening and like just it was insane. But honestly, oh god, I've lost my train of thought. Shall we move on? I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. Fair enough. If you think of it later, you can add it. It is mental health is a prominent issue amongst sex workers because not only listen, sex workers are already a marginalized group of people. We're women, we're trans, we're takatapui, we're disabled, we're single mothers. Like, we are marginalized people entering a space that makes us more marginalized on top of the marginalizations that we already had. And then you combine that with just how whorephobic our society is. I don't think that the sex work industry is inherently a bad thing. I think if it was operated and owned by sex workers, it could be a really, it's still work at the end of the day. Work is always going to be exploitative because it's fucking work. You have to earn a living. But I don't think it needs to be this inherently negative, dangerous space that it is. It's the people running it that make it that way. But because of the state of what it is and because of the way that society treats us, I don't think there is a sex worker out there that doesn't have mental health issues that the industry unfortunately exemplifies and makes worse. but I don't think that should be used to justify shutting down the industry, because if you shut down this industry, there goes my way of feeding myself. There goes my stability, and I will be even mentally worse. Okay. Like, yes, this industry has made my mental health bad, but so has all the industries I've worked for. Every industry. I was bullied when I worked at KFC. I was bullied when I worked for Cotton On. Working in general, I think, I don't mean to be dramatic, but working in general is traumatizing. To have to earn a living, I think we as a society need to come together and talk more about how inherently traumatic it is that we were born without wanting to be. We're forced into this world where we're essentially like, the only way to survive is to work, and not all of us can handle that. And that is traumatizing. Work as an idea, as an institution, is traumatizing for everyone. And it's just not fair how much that inherent mental instability in sex workers is used to justify shutting our industry down, where without the industry, we would be a lot worse. I don't think I would be alive if it weren't for this industry, which again is ironic because in many ways the industry has made me suicidal, but I still can sit here with all of these mental health conditions that I know have manifested through my experience and of being in close proximity with this world. But I can confidently say, but I wouldn't shut it down. I just want to change the things that are wrong with it. I hate this extreme idea we have as a society that if something is wrong, it's like, let's just get rid of it entirely. Like, can we have a conversation and room for nuance where something that it's not, it's this very binary, like this very binary way of thinking of like, things are inherently good or bad. If it's bad, it needs to go. And if it's good, it can stay. And it's like, there's no way to question it. If something's good, oh, it's just good, we can't question it. Like, no, it's perfect. And if something's bad, oh, we need to get rid of it. Sometimes things can be good and bad. And if we could hold space to get rid of the bad, to eliminate the bad, to micromanage the bad, it doesn't have to just be get rid of it entirely. It's let's get rid of the things that are making it bad. Let's get the weeds out of the garden so that the flowers can grow. But sex workers are constantly subject to any slight weed we have is used as like, we need to exterminate the whole garden. And it's really frustrating when you're trying to navigate the mental health system with that in mind, that you don't want to be the person reinforcing these negative stereotypes, but also you need help, and we should be allowed to ask for help without it being used to vilify us.
I think something that I've just been thinking about while you've been talking, I have a question and I want us both to answer it. Aside from the very, like, trauma is subjective, of course, but aside from the obvious management bullshit assault, what do we think is something about the industry that is impactful on mental health? Do you have any, like, thing that just comes to mind randomly off the top of your head, Vixen?
Absolutely. The first thing that came to my mind was going back to being a stripper and just the hours we had to work, because, you know.
Yes. I was going to say sleep, man.
Yeah. Sleep.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's back when I was a stripper and the late night hours I would work, I could handle that in my early 20s. But as I started to approach like 25, I remember I was living in Tamaki Makaurau at this point, so I could do day shift, and I had to switch to day shift because it was like, I just can't handle these late night hours anymore. Like, you feel like a vampire. You sleep all day and you work all night, and it's fun, and it's don't get me wrong, like, it was really fun when I first started. Oh my God, I was living my best life. But as I started getting older, and I think as my disabilities started to get worse, it was like, fuck, I can't do this anymore. And another thing my brain thought of was the emotional labor we have to provide as strippers and sex workers, which is not inherently a good or bad thing, but you know, we live in a world that teaches men that intimacy is only sexual. And so this male loneliness epidemic is a result of patriarchal conditioning of what masculinity is. Men are not taught to experience emotions through platonic love or any other love besides a sexual romantic partner. No wonder they're fucking lonely. And so men come to strippers and sex workers because it's this acceptable, oh, you know, there's a sexy woman you can go talk to. But a lot of the time we end up in bookings with men who fucking just need a shoulder to cry on. I've talked men out of suicide. I'm not a fucking therapist. I don't have a psychology degree. And even if I did, this is not the place for me to be using it. I'm at a nightclub. I'm in a brothel room. Like, I'm not qualified to be talking about this stuff. And just the things I've had to hear and the burdens I've had to carry, you really have to get in a routine of coming home and doing a like post-shift ritual to get that off you, because I'm sure you're the same, Medeline. Me being on the spectrum, I'm a highly empathetic person, deeply sensitive. I can feel other people's energies to a point that I sometimes don't know what's mine and what's others. And that is a really difficult thing to navigate when you don't have the tools to just get through that. So for a long time, like when I was especially working as a stripper, I just was constantly carrying other people's burdens and weight. It was like wearing a jacket, a wet leather soaked jacket that is covered in hair, and it would drag me down, and I would come home from work, you know, physically exhausted because it's a physically demanding job, but also just like the heaviness of essentially being a therapist for grown men and talking grown men out of suicide, or like, it's crazy, man. What about you, Medeline? Do you agree, and do you have other examples?
I agree with the emotional labor. My, like, you know how there's like different like stripper archetypes, and it sounds like you were very much in that like therapist stripper realm. For a large portion of my career, my strip club dynamic was I was in a trio, and us as a trio would take groups of men upstairs and just party hard. And so I was partying, like, and so I had the lack of sleep on top of the partying, which I'm sure everyone can understand. I was I was not a big drinker, but yeah, we'll leave it at that. I partied a lot at the strip club, and there was a period of time, maybe a year, where we were busy, and that in itself was hard, having to be that like professional party girl and be fun and be sexy and, you know, all of this kind of stuff. That was, yeah, that was tiring. But if I think about something that I think really fucked my mental health the most, that had anything to do with sex work, was just the way that men that I was dating treated me because of my being a stripper. Um, Men are evil. I'm sorry. I am a misandrist. I'm so sorry, everyone, if you're a man. I'm sorry, not all men, but like I was actively dating throughout being a stripper. I was single for the most of it, for most of my full-time stripping career. And just every single man that I met that I told was just evil to me, and they would use my being a sex worker as a way to be horrible to me. And that is horrendous when you know that you're a catch and that these men are actually punching, but they think they have an upper hand on you because they perceive you as this dehumanized like thing that isn't like worthy of a real, like, I don't know, decent like relationship. Um, and so they're just evil. And my men, my collection of men at that time, would always come and fucking visit me at work. And that is its own thing in itself. I wasn't necessarily, every now and then I would invite one of them, but I wasn't trying to get them to come in, but these men knew where I worked, and so they would come to my fucking workplace and just, yeah, pollute the environment with their weird vibe of being obsessed with me, but also thinking that I'm not good enough thing. and this like weird judgment thing. And honestly, that is like, it's so, what's the word? Like defeating and disheartening, I guess is the right word, when you are someone who is like, I'm a lover girl. I've always been a lover girl. I think I always will be. I'm anxiously attached. I think I'm working my way out of that now. I'm pretty much out of that now. But at the time, I was like ruthlessly anxiously attached to men. And when you are someone that really wants to be in love, knowing that the only thing that is holding these people back is their just blatant whorephobia toward your career is so fucking frustrating, and it's bullshit. What do you think of that, Vixen?
I think, oh my God, girl. Okay, first of all, I too am a misandrist, so no need to apologize to me, but apologies to any men listening. No, I am really glad that you mentioned that, because we, in a future episode, are 100% going to talk more about dating as sex workers, because that is a fucking yarn. But I really like that you mentioned, just, wait, what was I going to say with that? Oh yes, I like that you mentioned men, because the topic of men is something that I talk about a lot as Vixen Temple, because, you know, men, the patriarchy, men are responsible for the patriarchy. One thing that I really struggle with being a sex worker is no one understands men quite like sex workers do. We see a side to men that they keep hidden from the people in their day-to-day life. I've mentioned in a previous episode, like, I feel like trans women, sex workers, and divorced women know men like no one fucking else. And people need to listen to trans women, sex workers, and divorced women of men husbands when we talk about what men are like. But what's really annoying is that when you are a sex worker speaking about your experiences with men, people can weaponize your mental health and your sex working as like, don't listen to her, she's just a crazy misandrist stripper. I have something I am quite proud of is that I can, over the years, you know, one of my fixations is the patriarchy and trying to make sense of it. I've done a lot of research, and I've really, listen, I'm a bitch that reads a lot of books, and I've read a lot of really good books that have helped me flesh out the history of patriarchy and understanding like how we got here. And so I am making these really well-educated, beautifully articulated criticisms of quote unquote men, the idea of masculinity. And I will refer to examples that I've seen while working as a stripper or a sex worker where my clientele are largely men, which you'd think should make me an expert, but people will use that to be like, oh, what would you know? You're just a dumb stripper. It's like, no, honey, I am, if any other fucking job, when they discuss their clientele, people would listen to them, right? Because, oh, of course, you'd be the expert. That's your clientele. No one wants to listen to the stripper or sex worker when we speak up about our experiences with men, because we're just crazy. And I get so frustrated when I am making critiques of masculinity. I use examples I've seen in the strip club, and it's just so easy to dismiss me as like, oh, she's just mentally ill. The mental health system is so behind. It is so patriarchal. It is so white supremacist. The way that, what is the mental health diagnosis? What is that thing called?
Fuck, DSM-5?
Yeah, so whatever
Yeah.
that thing is, what, like, just a bunch of white guys sitting in a room being like, oh yes, this is this and this is that. And, you know, back in the day, everyone was schizophrenic. It was just, you know, the schizophrenic diagnosis was like anything from anxiety, depression, woman masturbating. Like, you look at the history of mental health. Sorry, I'm tangenting, because like mental health is a weird, and psychology is a weird hyperfixation and special interest of mine. But going back to the BPD diagnosis, it's just this really misogynistic thing that gets used to dismiss very valid concerns. And I feel a lot of similarities, you know, as sex workers and strippers who are largely women or quote unquote feminine people. It's so easy to dismiss us when we speak about our experiences as just being crazy, crazy bitches. And it's really hard trying to have people listen to you and believe that what you have to say is important and worthy of a compassionate ear, when you know a lot of the time people are just look at you, classic Vixen, crazy misandrous bitch, like she's so traumatized from being a sex worker and she's just crazy. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. It's just this interesting thing of like the amount of times people will say, oh, don't listen to her, she's just mentally ill from working in this industry. Well, do we want to address the elephant in the room then? What is it about this industry that has made us so mentally ill? It's the systems that contribute to it. It's the patriarchal colonial systems. And instead of talking about that, it just gets put onto the person. Oh no, she's just crazy. She's just crazy. So don't listen to her. Honey, I'm telling you, the crazier the person, the more sense they're making in my mind. Like, I look back,
Period.
right? I look back at my life of all the people that told me I was told are crazy. They talk the most sense. Do you know who scares me? A man, a fucking white guy in a business suit. You know, like I just, the crazy people in the world, quote unquote crazy people in the world, usually talk the most sense. And the quote unquote stable people to me are the crazy ones.
Can I say something potentially not a very like loved opinion?
No, let's go.
The more intelligent you are, the more mentally ill you are.
I agree.
Like,
Listen,
I'm sorry, like the more you can like really see the world with open eyes and understanding, the more depressed you get because the shit is fucked, obviously. And I definitely think that and this sounds cocky, but again, I'm trying to fight my tall poppy. I definitely think that you and I, Vixen, have this issue because we are both intelligent and have both put in a fuck ton of effort to understand the patriarchy, whorephobia, sex work industry, all of these things. Uh, and once you really dig into that at quite a very deep level, once your eyes are opened, your eyes are fucking opened and you see it fucking everywhere. And what you were saying about your clientele and like us being experts in men, once you've come into contact with men in the strip club and have been able to analyze and observe their behavior in the strip club for a, a decent amount of time, long term, it makes it also a lot fucking easier to decipher men outside of the strip club. And so now, when you are watching the behavior of the men in your life outside of your job, you're also able to pick up on their bullshit. And like I experienced that like so hugely with my male friends when I became a stripper, after I had like settled in, it had maybe been like 18 months, I had started to kind of like understand what the fuck was going on with the job and how to kind of do it, and how to maneuver and like engineer men in my favor. Actually, like observing my like male friends and friends groups that I was in was so fascinating because you can see all of that shit in them. It's just not necessarily super obvious to like the naked eye, being like people who aren't maybe as experienced in this as we are. And again, that shit's fucking depressing. That shit is fucking depressing. And I also, have a lot of feelings around being mentally ill and that intersecting with me being a sex worker in the way that I tell people that I'm mentally ill. I try really, really, like, I try to be quite intentional and purposeful about being clear and truthful and honest about my mental illness because I think it's important that we talk about it. And I mean, a lot of people in our space, in the sex work space, amongst each other, we're very honest, but I actually don't think the world as a whole is actually that honest about mental health right now. I think we're getting there with neurodiversity. I think that's becoming a bit more spoken about and looked into, but like the real like dark side of mental health still not really spoken about. And like me and Vixen said, we both had very, very intimate experiences with mental health. And when you experience or witness that like dark, dark, dark side of mental illness, suicidality, suicide, full stop. It is like, oh, it's so eye-opening. And knowing what you know there and then having that put in conjunction with you being a sex worker, sharing that with other people is terrifying. It's so terrifying because, and this feeds back to our earlier conversation about our earlier point about, you know, therapists taking one look at us, hearing that we're sex workers and being like, holy fuck, damaged goods, you know, whatever that is. It makes it like, it makes all of your own personal trauma just like so much harder to access and be honest about because we're conditioned to be, especially women, and I'll go an extension of that, especially women in New Zealand, where we're so polite and, gentle and soft with each other. It makes it so fucking hard to actually get into the nitty gritty of real mental illness. And I don't know, like, in my circles, and I want you to answer this after I've said it, Vixen, because I want to know if you agree with this. But in my circles that I have created since becoming a sex worker, so, my circles at the moment are incredibly diverse in all kinds of ways. And like, for the majority are sex workers or have experience with sex work in some way. But we are all quite in touch with mental illness that goes beyond, and this is not to minimize anxiety, but that gets into that more like, yeah, like I said, that darker range. I feel like I can quite easily speak with my people in my circles about things like personality disorders, suicide, experiences with suicide, you know, all of that, a lot more like, yeah, heavy mental health stuff. Whereas with people that I are not in my circles, that I are probably not sex workers, I find I just either they just won't talk about it or they don't actually have a lot of experience with it. Do you agree with this, Vixen?
Yeah, absolutely. I live in quite a bubble with my inner circle, and my chosen community, my chosen whānau, are all very diverse people too, in a beautiful range of ways. And as a result, I mean, we're all just othered in so many ways in society. And so that is an inherently very traumatizing thing to experience. So all of my inner friend group and my community, we're all mentally ill. But agreeing with what you said, like, I think it arguably makes us more intelligent. I think mental illness is a symptom of being so aware of the harshness of the world and the realities of the world and the systems that have negatively impacted us. So when I am in spaces where I'm suddenly met with this confronting reality that not everyone is so aware of that, it can make, that's when I suddenly start feeling like, oh, I get why people think I'm crazy. Like you're like, you're talking so candidly and nonchalantly about things, and you feel the person sort of look at you like, the fuck, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right, like this isn't normal for most people.
I literally like, and I have a very specific memory from, fuck, when was this? Like, not that long ago. It was someone's birthday dinner that I didn't know very well. Um, I was there with my boyfriend, but I didn't really know the person whose birthday it was super well. It must have been in the last year, maybe a little bit longer than that. But I remember sitting at the table with these people and they were talking about their work. These were all like very normie, quite square, office working kind of people. They were all talking about work and they were just kind of like, having some banter about it and, complaining XYZ like you would. And I just remember sitting there and being like, I can't converse with these people because what I talk about usually and my experiences in life just are so far out of the scope of conversation with these people. And that's nothing wrong with those people. They're not bad people. They're not dumb people. They're not wrong. That is just their experience in their life. And obviously, your experience in your life informs the way that you behave and, in this sense, the way that you socialize. And I had to like take myself the fuck away from that table, go to the bathroom and like deep breathe while staring at myself in the mirror for quite a while to be like calm my social anxiety because like what the fuck do you say to people when they say, like, what have you been up to? When what you've been up to is sex work and sex work advocacy and posting your crotch online, which is literally what I do every single day. How do you tell normies that? How do you tell normies that without the entire table being like, oh, and turning to you and being like, oh my God. And I guess like what is like the underlying theme of all of what I just said is firstly, my own internalized whorephobia as well as that of all the other people that I'm talking about, but also just the straight up fucking paranoia that we have to deal with when when you have these lived experiences, when your life is just that way, when you just that is your when sex work is sort of becomes a huge part of your life, it just is such a shift. It's such a huge shift from a regular, not regular, but like other styles of life. Um, and it really makes it fucking hard to socialize with people that are not in that space. Do you agree, Vixen?
Yeah, especially with the paranoia. That is something like I've always I've had anxiety for most of my life, I feel. It's very generational. I think all the women in my family have anxiety and depression. I also think everyone in my family is very fucking neurodiverse. But as I've entered the sex work industry, like my anxiety has turned into just straight up fucking paranoia. Like the constant, when you're with men, being really scared to tell them what your line of work is, because, that literally my line of work has enabled men to assault me sexually and get away with it. Being around women and the judgment that you feel like you're going to experience, and it makes you a deeply paranoid person that, I've always been quite a like extroverted introvert. But as I did sex work more, I definitely started to become a lot more introverted, just really struggling to trust people. And also, I think we live in a world that I actually think at the time of recording this, it's like Mental Health Awareness Week or something. I think people can claim to be pro mental health and everyone is pro mental health. I feel until a bitch is actually mentally ill in a way that's not pretty, in a way
Period.
in a way that's not glamorous or just like,
It's not sexy sad girl. It's like, oh no, this is serious, very scary and serious. Yeah.
like the first time you let someone you love witness you literally bashing your head against a wall is a very
Yeah. Period.
it's a confronting experience because you're like, sorry, I'm not the sad girl with like the smudged eyeliner and the cigarette. Like, I'm not this glamorous, sad, broken portrait. I'm like, I can be batshit crazy, and that's not to vilify myself. That is I have done some things in states of complete just traumatic relapse that I'm like, that's not a quote unquote normal thing to do. Like, it's not normal to bash your head against a wall or to try throw yourself in front of a butt. Like, like it's just not, it's
But
not
I think
normal.
this is like, again, like, it's like I have a couple of like experiences in mind that like this is making me think about you specifically saying like the first time you've let someone see you go like really spiral mode. Um, like I've spoken about this very like I've flirted with talking about this online. But let's just come out and say it because we're talking about it. I had the nervous breakdown of the century last year. Um, at the end of last year, it had been building for a while, definitely had been building for a while, and some evil people from some place that we won't talk about were very horrible to me, and that sort of kicked me off into this nervous breakdown. This is how I got my PTSD diagnosis because it was so fucking bad. But I remember uh, I I had the thoughts a few times like, oh my God, like I don't want anyone to know what's going on with me right now because like I'm feeding that stereotype right now. They are going to think that I am so unreliable, so unwell, unstable, crazy, yada yada yada. I so for me, my PTSD like manifests in like panic attacks, but like over like a lot of them over a period of time. So like my experience last year was, and the beginning of this year was just like 6 weeks of just like panic attacks nearly every single day. And I don't know if anyone listening has ever had a panic attack, but there's like a couple of different things that happen. A lot of people describe that they feel like they are having a heart attack or that they just think that they're going to die. So that's like a very common like feeling in a panic attack. For me, my specific flavor of panic attack is that I think that I am going psychotic. I'm not going psychotic. And if you don't know what I mean by psychotic, it's not a buzz term. It's a real mental health like event. If you don't know what that is, actually go have a look at it because it is a very real thing. But I'm not going psychosis. It's a panic attack about thinking that I'm going psychotic. But I remember being so terrified that people that I worked for would find out, that my students would find out, and I just like was like, holy fucking shit. No one can figure this out because immediately everyone is going to be like, yeah, she is fucking crazy. And I guess for me and you, Vixen, there's that added layer of like our advocacy makes people think we're even fucking crazier, which is bullshit. But um, I was like, wow, like this is going to confirm everything everyone thinks about me, and it's that I'm fucking insane. And I even remember having feelings that like I needed to, and I didn't do this, and I'm so lucky with Corey. Corey is just an angel on earth. But like I remember in my head being like, fuck, I need to like keep this on the like I need to keep this in check. Otherwise Corey is gonna think that I'm fucking insane and ditch me. And that is so sad, so horrible. And I have another experience, and this one is very dark, trigger warning, suicide. Um, I have talked about this a lot with my friends, and I've talked about this a lot with people in therapy or therapists, so I'm able to actually speak about it without becoming quite upset. But I can't remember I think it was 2022 or maybe the end of 2021. Um, One of my closest and oldest best friends took her own life, and I found out on a first date, which is fucking wild. And my friend had called me, one of my best friends called me to be like, hey, and she told me to step away, and she just told me on the phone, and I was like, where do I need to go? And she was like, you need to go here. And I was like, okay, hung up, walked back to the tray of this man's ute that I was sitting in, drinking wine. Anyway, cringe. But I go to him and I tell him he needs to take me somewhere. And on the spot, like, no thought went into this. I just full on lied to him about what had happened because I didn't want him to think I was fucking insane and that my life was just chaos because he knew I was a stripper. He knew from the get-go that I was a sex worker. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, like if I tell him what has happened and what I'm about to go and deal with, like he is definitely going to put me in that box of like unstable, chaotic, stripper, crazy kind of thing. And so I just randomly decided to tell him that my friend had been in a car accident and that I needed to go get her stuff. And I carried that lie through. And I remember being so confused about why I did it afterward. I was fully in shock, but like I was so confused. I was like, why the fuck did I do that? Like I'd literally just met that man. Why the fuck did I feel the need to like not tell him the truth? And it was because of that stigma that's put on us because I was like, oh my God, he's gonna think I'm fucking insane. And he's never gonna want to ever talk to me, see me, have anything to do with me again. And that is so fucked. And that's like a very dark example of just how deep and like how serious that paranoia can be, even in moments like that are like arguably the darkest moments of your life, that you are still informed by that stigma and that trauma and paranoia. Does that make sense, Vixen?
Thank you so much for sharing that. It actually unlocked a memory for me too, but I just wanted to acknowledge like how fucked it is that in that moment your brain is processing the most horrible news that someone can receive, like someone they love is gone. and you just have to navigate this social dynamic to not endorse a stereotype. Like, it's so exhausting. And as I mentioned, it unlocked a memory for me. So when I went through the justice system for the guy that assaulted me at the club I was working at, I hadn't come out to my mum as a stripper yet. So, oh no, I had come out to her as a stripper, but I hadn't told her about being assaulted because, it's literally every parent's worst fear when you tell them you're a stripper, but don't worry, I'm safe. And then you have to say, oh, but I was assaulted. Like, I've told her later, but at this time I hadn't told her, so I had to lie to my mother about, because the hearing happened, the sentencing trial happened in Ōtepoti, Dunedin. I was living in Tamaki at the time. I had to make an excuse to come home and tell my mother and lie to her. But a couple of days after the sentencing hearing, and he got a fucking dirt piss fucking, there was no justice served. But I was at the time, I'd started seeing someone, and he sent me a message being like, oh, do you want to like hang out tonight or something? And I just remember thinking the exact same thing. Like, how do I explain to this person that I really like them? Because, we'd seen each other a little bit at this point. I really like them. I really want to keep seeing them, but I'm going through such an intense thing right now. And I can't even remember whether I ended up telling them or not, but you telling me that story reminded me of that. Just the paranoia of like, how do I tell this person? And you're like on a first date. Like, that is so heavy to drop on someone on a first date. And it just goes back to that, as a society, like, we've come a long way with our understanding of mental health, but we've also got to understand that the study of psychology, I don't even think it's 100 years old, right? I might be wrong, but it is a very new development. And in saying that, arguably through history, it's mostly been the male brain that they've tried to make sense of. And when they have studied the female, quote unquote, female brain, it's to try prove that we're dumber or inadequate to men. So our understanding of mental health is, in the grand scheme of things, like baby level. We are so new to it all. And yes, the conversation is a bit more normalized and we talk about it more, but we're all fucking mentally ill. It is traumatizing to exist as a human under a colonized patriarchal world, regardless of how you identify. There's varying degrees of how it impacts you. But we are all, I would say, and I mean this respectfully, we are all fucked in the head. The way that our world is, there is nothing normal about the world. There is nothing normal about the way that things run because of the 1% in power that operate it and make it the way it is. And it's so difficult when you are a person that experiences mental health that can make you sometimes act in a way that I know is not easy to love, but we're still all deserving of love.
And I know we've all been touched by mental health in some way, but like when you've been touched by it in really horrible, horrible ways and have seen it, in action in the, not necessarily the strip club, but in sex work dynamics, like, oh my God, it just shifts your perspective. Like, I always get this comment from people, and I don't like it, but I always get you are very mature for your age. You are very mature for your age. And I'm like, yep, because I have lived so much fucking life via my experiences in my 20s, and most of that has directly to do with the fact that I was a stripper for a long time and that I've done all kinds of different styles of sex work. And that is just, oh yeah, that's a frustrating thing to hear people say, because it's kind of like, oh yeah, well the reason I'm mature is because I'm fucking traumatized. But yeah, it's it's so perspective shifting, and yeah, like it's like life changing. It's life changing, and it's fucked, and it's like something that we have to deal with, and it's something that's even harder for us to deal with because we are sex workers and because the systems suck. But it has made me so much more emotionally intelligent and receptive and vigilant, and what word am I looking for? There's one more word. Like, you can't get shit past me because I know, because I've seen a lot. And so I don't know, it's like this level of like intuition, or like knowing that comes with that kind of experience that like, yeah, you just can't get shit past me. And I know you're the same, Vixen.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe this is a conversation we can dedicate to an entire episode, because I'd say we're probably close to the end of this episode, but
Yeah.
I think there needs to be something to be said about like the psychological makeup of an activist and just how much it like, bro, again, I wouldn't change it. I love being an activist, but fuck, it has made me so mentally ill and so
Yeah.
just having
Yeah.
and not only the understanding that comes with it, but the way that people view you because of it, the way I know people think that I'm just this crazy man-hating, negative bitch, but like I just have such an immense understanding of so many things, and I have amazing pattern recognition skills, and when I like to share it with other people. I like to try. I'm not even trying to be arrogant with my like sharing it all. I just love to teach people and be like, oh my gosh, like I know this thing, and you should learn it too so that you can be aware of it so that we can all stop it. Um,
Mm.
but just the mental health trauma that comes with being an activist, that a big part of your co-papa is having to constantly remain up to date and aware with what's going on in the world, and the helplessness you feel as someone thinking that you yourself as an individual can change the whole world because you just care so much, and you're like, I'm
Mm.
gonna be the person to change and heal the world, and fucking, it's so
But
sweet, and it's so sad, and it's
also
just,
just like the way that people like demonize us as well.
oh yeah.
Like that's probably the part that's the most fucked for me that I find is when people like just go on little like smear campaigns of us and like be like, oh, she's a fucking crazy sex work activist, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, damn, you are wrong, but okay, fuck you. Yeah, that part is really fucks with me and still fucks with me, and I'm in therapy because of it to help with it. But I literally remember my therapist saying to me like a couple of months ago, like maybe like 6 months ago, being like, so are you aware that your advocacy really affects your mental health? And I just like pissed myself. I just laughed. I was like, yes, I'm super well aware. But again, I fucking choose it. I choose it. But this is where like good therapists and good like psychologists and counselors are really important, because it's like, don't tell me to stop doing that thing. Just help me cope with doing that thing, please. Like same idea from earlier. But what is the time, Vixen? We should probably we should probably stop this conversation before we go, but I definitely think we 100% should do something on our own advocacy and our mental health and all that kind of stuff.
I guess just to summarize today's corridor, yes, working as a sex worker contributes to my negative mental health issues, but I don't think that should be used to eliminate the industry. I think it should be used as a dialogue starter of like, what is it about the industry that should be changed and altered so that these things aren't happening. I don't know, it's just like the sex work industry has traumatized me, but it's also granted me a lot of enlightenment, I would say, and I wouldn't change that for the world. They do say that what is it, like enlightenment is like it's poison. It's hard to swallow, but you have to swallow it to purge some things out in order to have yourself be so awake. And I think depression comes with that. When you're someone that's willing to do the shadow work of the world and stare the belly of the beast in the eye and say like, I'm not going to turn away from this because shutting my eyes doesn't get rid of the monster. I need to look at it and make sense of it and try to address it. That's hard. That's scary. I understand ignorance is bliss. I sometimes look at quote unquote normal people and think like, you seem so happy. It must be, you see, life is so simple for you. It is exhausting to constantly be aware of the harsh realities of the world, and being a sex worker opens you up to a lot of those harsh realities. But knowledge is power for me as much as it can be a curse. And I would rather swallow the poison and have that knowledge that comes with it than be just in a state of ignorant bliss, because ignorant bliss is also very dangerous. But how about you, Madeline? Do you have any closing thoughts before we end for the
I
day?
just agree with everything that you say pretty much ever. Um, Not really any closing thoughts, honestly, just that like, ah, maybe everyone could have some more empathy for why we have mental illness and maybe just help us with our mental illness instead of trying to force us to change our life. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when it's quite often like not actually a productive route to go down. Could also be really, really super unproductive to try to get a sex worker to leave sex work in order to fix their life. Could make things way worse. Would have for me, probably would have for Vixen as well. But yeah, honestly, I agree with everything you said. So yeah, hope everyone has found this to be not super triggering, and informative. But yeah.
Yeah, then I'll go to everyone for listening. Yeah, as Madeline said, we hope this wasn't too confronting and triggering to listen to. If you are someone that struggles with mental health issues, you're not alone. And I hope that you have a supportive, caring team around you, because that definitely makes it a lot easier to navigate life when you have people in your circle that care about you and understand you and don't vilify you. But that's me. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Madeline?
No, that's pretty much it. I think you have finished that up beautifully.
You have been listening to Stripped and Unscripted with Vixen Temple and Madeline Rose. Thank you so much for the aroha. Thank you so much for the support. And we will see you in the next episode.